You've been breathing your whole life, and yet, no one ever told you this. They never told you that your breath is not just oxygen, it's data. They never told you that every inhale is an ancient intelligence, and every exhale, a release of stored emotion, memory, and even karma. They never told you that you could cry without a single thought, just through breath. That you could unlock trauma, access vision, transcend identity, without touching a substance or chanting a single mantra. They never told you that breath is not a tool, it's a portal, one that's been hidden in plain sight. Right now, while you sit here reading, your breath is either keeping you trapped in the frequency of survival or guiding you toward your deepest liberation. But you were never taught to use it. You were taught to ignore it, to breathe shallow, to breathe silently, to numb, suppress, override. You were never told that your breath could change your life, until now. Because in this video, we're going to reveal what most breathwork teachers won't say, not because it's too complex, but because it's too powerful. We'll explore what sacred breathwork really is, where it comes from, why ancient initiates used it to activate the pineal gland, induce altered states, and enter direct communication with the subconscious and beyond. We'll dive into the hidden link between breath and trauma, why most people can't breathe deeply without panicking, and what your breathing patterns are saying about your emotional past. And by the end, you'll understand why breath has been kept so simple, so you never realized it was sacred. If something in your body just sat up, if a memory stirred or a curiosity cracked open, stay, like this video, subscribe if you feel the pull, and in the comments tell me, when was the last time you really breathed? Because this isn't just a technique, it's a return to the part of you they hoped you'd never meet. Long before science named it respiration, ancient civilizations saw the breath for what it truly was, the bridge between body and spirit. In Sanskrit it was called prana, life force. In ancient Egypt it was ren, breath as identity. The Greeks knew it as pneuma, divine wind. And in the Hebrew scriptures, breath was ruach, spirit, moving through flesh. Not one of them reduced it to oxygen. Not one of them saw it as merely automatic. They knew that breath was intelligence, alive, responsive, sacred. They understood that how you breathe is how you live, that your breathing patterns are not just habits, they're reflections of your consciousness. The warrior breathed differently than the healer. The priestess inhaled into the belly, the initiate into the spine. They used breath to alter state, to enter trance, to open the gates between the seen and unseen. This was not performance, it was precision, because breath is the one system in your body that is both automatic and under your control. That paradox, it's not a flaw, it's an invitation to step out of survival and into sovereignty. Modern life has severed that link. It's taught us that breath is background, something that happens while we do life. But the ancients knew, you don't do life, you breathe it. Each inhale calls spirit in, each exhale releases resistance, and when done with intention, breath becomes remembrance of who you are, of where you come from, of the wisdom your body still carries, even when your mind forgets. That's why breathwork was guarded, not because it's dangerous, but because it's powerful. Too powerful for systems that rely on your numbness. Your body remembers what your mind has learned to forget. Every heartbreak you swallowed, every boundary you ignored, every panic you silenced to keep the peace. It's all there, and it speaks through the breath. Because the breath is not just air, it's a messenger. It travels deeper than thought. It reaches into the fascia, the gut, the spine, where your nervous system holds its most sacred truth, your story. See, trauma doesn't just live in memory, it lives in muscle. It reshapes your breath. When you experience fear, your breath shortens. When you feel shame, your chest collapses. When you suppress anger, your jaw tightens, your diaphragm freezes. And over time, this becomes your default. So much so that shallow breathing becomes your normal. Your body forgets what full presence feels like. You forget how to receive, without tension. But sacred breathwork interrupts that, because the moment you breathe with intention, not shallow, not forced, but honest, your body begins to release. Tears come, uninvited. Memories surface, without narration. Your hands tremble, your spine pulses, your belly softens in ways it never has. This isn't drama, it's data. The language of release isn't always pretty, but it's always intelligent. Breath goes where logic can't. It opens vaults in the nervous system, files you didn't know you locked away. And in doing so, it doesn't just clear emotion, it resets vibration. Because breath is the original calibrator, before the mantras, before the therapy, before the story. The breath was always there, waiting, not to heal you, but to show you that you were never broken, only blocked. What happens when you breathe deeper than you ever have, for longer than your mind thinks is safe? You start to slip, not into danger, but into depth. The edges of identity begin to blur. The stories you cling to begin to fall away. Time distorts. Memories arrive uninvited. Visions flicker behind closed eyes. Some call it hallucination. Others call it home. Because this isn't escape, it's emergence. You're not leaving your body. You're arriving in it, fully, for the first time. See, sacred breathwork changes your brainwaves. It moves you from beta, busy, surface thought, into alpha, then theta. And in that space, the veil between conscious and subconscious begins to thin. It's not magic, it's neurobiology. And yet, what it unlocks can feel mystical. You may meet parts of yourself you thought were lost. You may feel a presence that's never had a name. You may hear a phrase, clear, calm, undeniable, that shifts your entire life path, all through breath. Some report feeling weightless, others like they've returned from lifetimes. Colors appear, emotions merge. A single exhale becomes a prayer. And here's the secret. The breath didn't create these states. It revealed them, because these layers of consciousness were always there. You just never had the rhythm to reach them. Until now. Breath bypasses the gatekeeper of logic. It slips past the filters of the rational mind and lets you touch what the soul already knows. This is why breathwork was once guarded by priests and mystics, why temples were built around breath patterns, why some cultures believed you could meet the divine without ever speaking, as long as you knew how to breathe. So if you've ever felt something ancient stir when you breathe with depth and presence, you're not imagining it, you're remembering, and remembrance is the beginning of awakening. If breath is so healing, why does it feel so uncomfortable? Why do people panic the moment they inhale deeply? Why do their hands go numb, their chest tighten, their eyes water, even before a single memory returns? The answer is simple, because the breath doesn't lie. Most of us live our lives armored, not with steel, but with shallow breaths. We breathe just enough to survive, not to feel, not to expand, not to awaken, because real breath touches real emotion, and that is terrifying. See, when you breathe into your belly, you breathe into vulnerability. When you breathe into your chest, you touch grief. When you breathe into your back, you access memory. Your body begins to say, "We've been holding this for years," and suddenly your mind panics, not because the breath is unsafe, but because feeling is unfamiliar. Sacred breathwork strips away the buffers. It brings the subconscious to the surface, not with drama, but with precision. That tightness in your throat, it's all the times you silenced yourself, the shaking in your hands, all the times you weren't allowed to express anger, the tears you can't explain. They belong to the version of you who never got to finish their sentence. Breath doesn't trigger trauma, it reveals it, so it can finally leave. But here's the paradox. The moment you resist the release, your body tightens, your system contracts, you slip back into control, and the field closes. Not because you're weak, because you've practiced self-protection for so long, you forgot what surrender feels like. But this is the invitation. Stay with the discomfort, not to suffer, to soften, to prove to your body that presence is safe, that expression is allowed, that you can inhale fully and still be held. Because once the nervous system trusts the breath, once it sees you won't abandon it mid-process, something extraordinary happens. You stop breathing against life, you start breathing with it, and in that moment, transformation is no longer a concept. It's embodied. Every breath you take reshapes your field, not just your oxygen levels, but your electromagnetic signature. Because you are not just flesh and bone, you are frequency, you are vibration, you are a field. And sacred breathwork is one of the few tools that works across every layer of your being: physical, emotional, energetic, and subtle. When you breathe with depth and intention, you're not just expanding your lungs, you're activating dormant circuits. Your spine begins to pulse, your heart begins to open, your skin tingles as if remembering something it was never taught. This isn't imagination, this is energy in motion. The yogic traditions mapped it long ago. 7 primary energy centers, chakras, each governing a different aspect of your consciousness. And breath is the key that unlocks them. When you breathe into the base, you ground. When you breathe into the sacral, you release shame, awaken sensuality. When you reach the solar plexus, you meet your will, your inner fire. The heart, it may ache, it may crack, but when breath touches it, it blooms. Your voice clears, your vision expands, your crown begins to hum with silence. And as each center opens, a current begins to rise, not forced, but fluid. Some call it prana, others call it chi. Some experience it as the kundalini, the sacred serpent energy that lives coiled at the base of your spine, waiting for breath to invite it upward. This isn't esoteric theory, it's embodied physics. Your breath is electrical, it moves ions, it feeds your aura, it recalibrates your coherence. And the more coherent your field, the more aligned your external reality becomes. You speak, and things shift. You feel, and others feel it with you. You exist, and that becomes enough. Because when your energy is clear, you no longer need to convince. You simply transmit. And sacred breathwork, it's not just healing, it's activation. You're not just calming the nervous system, you're turning the light back on. There is a silence inside you that does not speak in words, but in pulses, in intuition, in presence. Most never hear it. Not because it's not speaking, but because the noise is too loud. But breath is the volume dial. Each inhale quiets the ego. Each exhale opens the signal. And as the mind begins to soften, another awareness steps forward. Not logical, not linear, but deep, still, unmistakable. Some call it the higher self. Some call it soul. Some call it divine memory. But you know it when it arrives, because it doesn't advise from fear. It doesn't react. It remembers. It knows who you were before the programming. It knows what you came here to learn. It knows how to guide you, not with commands, but with resonance. And sacred breathwork, it's one of the most direct ways to access it, not because breath is spiritual, but because breath silences what isn't. You start to notice answers arriving before questions, a clarity you didn't think you earned, a softness in your body you've never felt, but always longed for. You're no longer trying to figure it out. You're receiving, you're remembering, and for the first time, maybe ever, you feel safe inside your own being. That's the power of breath. It doesn't just move air, it makes space for truth, for alignment, for reconnection with the part of you that never left, but has been waiting, for silence. And the silence begins with breath. You've heard it before. Your outer world reflects your inner state. But what if that wasn't a metaphor? What if your breath, something so simple, so constant, so overlooked, was the most direct lever to shift the timeline you're living in? Here's what they never told you. You don't need to force your reality into alignment. You just need to become a field it can respond to, because your vibration isn't determined by what you think. It's determined by what you're embodying, in every moment, through breath. When you breathe shallow, tight, fearful, you signal survival. You tell the field, I am not safe, I am not ready, I am not open. And reality responds accordingly. Delayed opportunities, stuck relationships, closed doors, not as punishment, as coherence. But when you shift your breath, slow it, deepen it, bring presence into it, your entire field begins to reorganize. Your nervous system relaxes, your thoughts soften, your heart space opens. And in that opening, life starts to move differently. You speak less, but your words land. You act less, but everything flows. You stop pushing and start aligning, because breath doesn't just move oxygen, it moves timelines. You begin to attract from the version of you that's no longer desperate, no longer grasping, no longer proving. You start to magnetize what matches your new frequency, not because you earned it, but because you finally allowed it. Breath becomes your proof that you are no longer vibrating from lack, that you trust, that you're open, that you are ready to receive the life that has been waiting for you to slow down long enough to feel it. This isn't mysticism, it's mechanics. Energy follows breath, form follows frequency, reality follows resonance, and the most powerful thing you can do to rewrite your life is to breathe like the version of you who already lives it. The moment your breath starts to unlock the truth, the ego starts to panic, not because breath is dangerous, but because freedom is unfamiliar. You've spent years, maybe lifetimes, building an identity that was rooted in control, in survival, in fitting in. And suddenly, through nothing but air, that identity starts to crack. You feel emotions that don't have names. You remember versions of yourself that never got closure. You sense spaciousness where you once felt tight. And for the ego, that's not peace, that's death. Because the ego thrives on patterns. It survives by looping the same fear, the same story, the same contraction. Breath interrupts that. It introduces chaos, beautiful, intelligent, sacred chaos. And the ego doesn't know how to live there, so it fights. It floods your mind with doubt. This is weird. This isn't working. This is too much. It brings back urgency. Get up. Do something. Fix it. It tries to make you small again, not out of malice, but out of habit. Because small is familiar. Small is safe. Small is where the world praised you. But breath has other plans. Breath doesn't care about your conditioning. It cares about your coherence. So the deeper you breathe, the louder the ego might scream. At first. Not because something is wrong, but because something is leaving. Every tremor, every tear, every sigh is the old self being exhaled. Gently, rhythmically, honestly. You are not losing yourself. You are losing what you had to become to survive a world that couldn't yet hold your truth. So if the resistance shows up, don't run, don't fix, don't label, breathe, through the doubt, through the noise, through the breaking, because what breaks was never you. It was the mask. And breath, it's not just removing it, it's revealing who's underneath. At the end of it all, there is no mantra, no technique, no path left to walk. There is only this breath. Now inhale. Feel the space behind your chest. Feel the memory it carries. Feel the silence waiting underneath the noise. Exhale. Feel what leaves. The tension that never had a name. The story that was never yours. The self you had to become to be loved by a world that didn't know how to love fully. And then again, inhale. Not to escape, not to transcend, but to arrive. Because breath is the most honest thing about you. It doesn't lie, it doesn't perform, it doesn't explain, it just moves. Like truth, like presence, like you, before you were trained to forget. Sacred breathwork isn't a technique to master, it's a remembering to return to, over and over and over again, until the breath becomes prayer, until the silence becomes home, until the body becomes safe again. And when that happens, life changes, not because you forced it, but because you finally matched the version of reality that was always waiting for the version of you who remembered how to breathe. So if something shifted in you during this journey, if you cried without reason, if you softened without instruction, if you remembered without words, say so in the comments. Let the others know they're not alone. That breath is real, that change is real, that you are real. And if you're ready to breathe your life differently, subscribe, not to this channel, to yourself. Because the truth they never told you, you don't need to find your way back. You were the breath all along, and you just remembered.